In the 1970s, the American car market was changing fast. The oil crisis had hit, gas prices were rising, and drivers wanted smaller, more fuel-efficient cars. European imports like Volkswagen and Japanese brands like Toyota and Datsun were starting to win the hearts of American families. The big automakers Ford, GM, and Chrysler struggled to adapt. But there was one company that saw this shift as a chance to rise: American Motors Corporation, better known as AMC. AMC was already the smallest of the American car makers, but it had a history of bold decisions. In 1975, they unveiled what they believed would be their masterpiece, the AMC Pacer. Advertised as the first wide small car, the Pacer was unlike anything the public had ever seen. It was short and compact but unusually wide, with huge curved glass windows that made it look futuristic. From the outside, some said it looked like a bubble on wheels. AMC promoted the Pacer as a car perfectly built for the new world. It was smaller than traditional American sedans but much roomier than foreign imports. Families would have space, drivers would have comfort, and everyone would enjoy better fuel economy. To AMC, this car wasn't just another model. It was their survival strategy, their chance to leap ahead of Detroit's giants. At first, the gamble seemed to work. When the Pacer debuted, it grabbed attention everywhere it went. People stared, kids pointed, magazines called it daring and revolutionary. AMC marketed it as the car of the future, and for a short while, buyers believed it. Sales in the first year crossed 100,000 units, a huge number for a company AMC's size. But the Pacer had a problem hiding under its curved glass and wide stance. The car had been designed for a new engine AMC was developing with help from General Motors, a lightweight rotary engine that promised efficiency and smooth performance. But at the last moment, GM canceled the project. AMC was left scrambling, and instead of a new high-tech engine, the Pacer was forced to use AMC's old, heavy six-cylinder engines. This completely changed the car. Instead of being light and efficient, the Pacer was heavy and sluggish. The large glass windows made the car hot in summer, forcing drivers to use air conditioning, which drained even more power. The futuristic shape came at a price too. It made the car difficult to repair and expensive to build. Still, in its early days, people tolerated the flaws because the Pacer looked so different. It was quirky, unique, and had personality. Some buyers loved it for standing out in a sea of boxy sedans. But soon, the excitement began to fade. Drivers realized that beneath its unusual design, the Pacer wasn't practical. The car that was supposed to save AMC had already begun showing cracks. And the story of how the Pacer went from car of the future to car that killed a company was only beginning. The first year of the AMC Pacer created a buzz, but once the excitement wore off, buyers began to notice the problems. The biggest was its weight. For a compact car, the Pacer was surprisingly heavy, over 3,000 pounds, because of its thick glass and wide body. With the outdated six-cylinder engine under the hood, the Pacer was slow to accelerate, noisy at high speeds, and poor on gas mileage compared to the very imports it was supposed to compete against. This was the 1970s, a time when Americans were desperate for fuel efficiency. After the oil crisis of 1973, every gallon of gas mattered. Toyota Corollas and Honda Civics were winning fans because they were small, light, and cheap to run. The Pacer, on the other hand, delivered disappointing mileage. Instead of being the future, it felt like a compromise, something too heavy to be efficient and too small to be truly comfortable. Then came the issue of heat. Those giant glass windows that made the Pacer look so futuristic also turned it into a greenhouse. On hot days, the car's interior became unbearable, forcing drivers to crank the air conditioning. But the air conditioning drained power from an already weak engine, making the driving experience even worse. On top of this, the design, which looked bold in 1975, began to seem strange very quickly. The Pacer's rounded body didn't age well in an era when most cars still had sharp, boxy lines. Some joked it looked like a fishbowl. Others said it was the flying saucer of the road. What had once been quirky started to look awkward. And then came the quality issues. AMC was already stretched thin financially, and the Pacer's unusual shape was expensive to build. Assembly quality often suffered. Doors didn't align properly, parts wore out too fast, and repairs were costly because the car's design made it difficult to service. Owners complained, mechanics cursed it, and word of mouth turned sour. Sales began to slide quickly. From over 100,000 units in 1975, they fell to barely half that by 1977, and by the end of the decade, they were in free fall. AMC tried to save the Pacer by offering new trims and even a station wagon version, but nothing worked. The public had lost interest. Meanwhile, AMC's rivals were thriving. Japanese imports were growing stronger every year. American giants like Ford and GM began catching up too, releasing their own compact cars with better fuel efficiency. The very market AMC thought it would dominate was slipping away from them. By the late 1970s, the Pacer was no longer seen as bold. It was seen as weird, slow, and impractical. Car magazines ranked it among the worst buys. Used car values collapsed, leaving owners frustrated. And worst of all, the Pacer was draining AMC itself. The company had gambled heavily on this car. They invested precious resources into a design that didn't pay off. With sales falling and costs rising, AMC's finances grew weaker. The very car that was meant to save the company was instead pushing it closer to collapse. But the real end was yet to come. Because while the Pacer was failing, AMC was facing other pressures: rising competition, shrinking budgets, and a brand reputation sinking fast. The question wasn't just about one car anymore. It was about whether AMC could survive at all. By the end of the 1970s, the AMC Pacer had gone from bold experiment to national punchline. What started as the car of the future was now mocked as a strange bubble on wheels. Sales had collapsed, and dealerships struggled to move them off the lot, often resorting to deep discounts just to clear space. For AMC, the Pacer's failure was devastating. The company had invested heavily in its development, hoping it would give them a long-term advantage. Instead, the car drained resources without delivering steady profits. At a time when larger automakers could afford to recover from missteps, AMC simply didn't have the cushion. They were a small player in a brutal industry, and one big failure was enough to put them in serious danger. By the early 1980s, AMC's reputation was in shambles. Customers no longer trusted the brand, investors were nervous, and competitors had surged far ahead. The imports from Japan were reliable and efficient. The big three were producing their own compact cars, and AMC was stuck with a lineup that didn't inspire confidence. The Pacer became the symbol of everything wrong with AMC. It was seen as odd, impractical, and overpriced. Even when AMC introduced other cars like the Spirit or the Eagle, the shadow of the Pacer lingered. The brand could never quite recover from the stigma of being the company that built that weird car. Financial pressure mounted. In 1980, Renault, the French automaker, bought a major stake in AMC to keep it alive. For a short time, this partnership gave AMC breathing room, but the Pacer had already drained so much of the company's resources that the damage was beyond repair. By 1987, AMC was bought out completely by Chrysler. The smallest American carmaker disappeared, absorbed into a larger competitor. And yet the Pacer lived on, not as a success, but as a piece of cultural history. It appeared in movies, television shows, and even became a cult favorite among collectors who loved its oddball design. Its quirks, once mocked, made it unforgettable. But none of that could erase the fact that it played a central role in AMC's downfall. The Pacer's story is powerful because it wasn't just about a car. It was about ambition, risk, and timing. AMC tried to think ahead, but when the engine partnership collapsed and the design flaws became obvious, they couldn't adapt. The Pacer turned from savior to anchor, dragging the company under. In the end, the AMC Pacer is remembered as the car that killed a company. It didn't do it alone. There were many factors in AMC's decline, but the Pacer became the face of that failure. It showed how one bold gamble, if it goes wrong, can destroy everything. And maybe that's why people still talk about it today. Because in its strange, wide body and oversized glass, the Pacer carries a lesson. Being different can make you stand out. But if you don't deliver on performance, value, and trust, no amount of bold design can save you. The AMC Pacer may have been mocked, but it left behind a legacy larger than itself. A warning to every car company that the line between innovation and disaster is razor thin. And for AMC, crossing that line was the beginning of the end.